I'm feeling special because I got confidence, and confidence is faith, and faith is confidence, and I got it in the Most High. I'm feeling special, never compromise my confidence. I like to talk about heaven, cause that is where my providence. He built my spirit, we over the flesh, dominant. Reading through the scriptures, I'm reading through all the documents. Like, thank you, Abba, for all this wisdom. I'm chasing godliness. I do not want your approval, cause that is profitless. I try to keep the rules and commandments, my spirit profiting. Kaki bow, the Hamashiach, I hope is obvious. I love the Most High, yeah. I know he see it too, but his love a different version than society's view. They try to tell you love is freedom and letting it loose, but based on scripture, love is giving and keeping the rules. They try to tell you place your confidence in all these things, and all these boys and pretty cars and nice bling. You got mascara now, you gotta have the big blinks, the big minks, the 24 M&M teams. The guys be out here calling themselves the drip king, but yeah, it's calling, he say turn from them old ways. But all the people can't tie down like a shoestring, and they still chasing after rollies. Gotta stay humble on the low key. I get all my confidence from what he told me. I don't listen to the word these people phony. I be set apart, I'm on my lonely. I place my trust in the one above. I let it talk to the one above. I make time for the one-on-one. He stay filled in my spirit up. I place my trust in the one above. I let it talk to the one above. I make time for the one-on-one. You stay filled in my spirit up. Feeling like I'm on another planet. I say don't seek after approval, cause it's gonna vanish. They so used to getting compliments, they can't understand it. Foundation rooted in comments and even self-appearance, but that's not good for your house, gonna sink Titanic. Like oceanic, when the waves crash, there's nothing standing. Have a firm foundation, I could show you the way. His name begin with a Y and it ends with an A. I am not speaking no jokes, I'm not playing no games. Your confidence is key, cause that's the placement of your faith. It's literally idolatry if you have it in fame, or better yet if you stay having it in your own name. I put your trust in the one above. I let it talk to the one above. I make time for the one-on-one. He stay filled in my spirit up. I place my trust in the one above. I let it talk to the one above. I make time for the one-on-one. You stay filled in my spirit up. It's gonna vanish. Understand it. Self-appearance.
Greetings and shalom, our new and all guests in the space. Welcome to our season 2 premiere of the Womb Room. I am Akoti Yafe, and I am joined by some of our new sisters who are going to be leading this discussion, Ima Akuya and Akoti. So today's discussion, as you can see, has we are going to be focusing on the question, what is a natural woman? So we are encouraging all of you who have joined us this evening to put your comments in the chat, engage, like, share, subscribe. Hearing something you like, feel free to join us on stage. We will be sharing the link in the chat. So I'm going to turn it over to Akoti Yamina to give you the background of this discussion and take it away.
Peace, everyone. Shalom. Welcome to the Room. I'm really looking forward to this discussion. So in January, this is how it all started. In January, there was a viral post by an activist group in Norway called the Transcultural Mindfulness Alliance. And they were petitioning to have Aretha Franklin's song, A Natural Woman, removed from Spotify and Apple Music because they deemed the lyrics to be offensive, saying that a natural woman does not exist. And it perpetuates multiple harmful anti-trans stereotypes. So there's no such thing as a natural woman. That is what they said. Now later on, they took it back and said it was a parody. But that was after all, days of people just in an uproar. So my question was, well, how would that parity even work in today's society? And like, if that was, whether it's a parody or not, it still worked. So that's what we're going to discuss today, and that's kind of what I was asking women around me, and I know the sisters helped out too, and they asked a few women around them, what is a natural woman? And if you haven't answered the poll, please answer it in the chat, and we can have a lively discussion, and that includes men too, because as we discuss, we will discuss further, we are not. Anyways, I won't even get into that. Men can answer too. But yeah, that's the context of today's discussion. Ima Kuya, did you want to add anything, or we can get right into it?
No, we can get right into it.
Well, how are you ladies feeling today?
I'm doing well. It's after Sabbath. I'm rested, so I'm ready for this discussion. I can't wait to see what y'all bring and hear it.
I'm excited.
Yeah, we had a great Sabbath build this dawning, and I'm happy to be here with you all. So we're gonna start with definitions. So the definitions of what is natural and what is a woman. And I think that will clear up a lot of things. So according to Anu, we'll start with the culture that we're in. A woman, no matter the age, should be poured into her by her father, then her master or mate. And the order of authority travels from Yah to man to woman to children. And the matriarchy, it does exist inside of Anu, and it's headed by a patriarchal order. So nature, Imokuya, did you want to give that definition?
Yeah, what I have as a definition is it describes something to be born with rather than being made by man or determined by factors present in an individual from birth. That etymology, which is Latin, comes from natura, which is birth, again, or nature, quality, innate, born. Another word is natis, which is born, or nasi, to be born, or the course of things. I thought it was important how you related it to the where we need to begin, concerning the hierarchy. And what I wanted to point out was, pretty much towards the beginning of time in Genesis, that was something that that I was thinking about as it relates to the order of things, and where you will find the nature of the man and woman, or actually, well, maybe I could say role, but in Genesis, it just simply talks about. I think I'm related to, maybe, I don't want to say pronouns, but within Genesis, you do see where, let me just go to it really quickly. Genesis chapters 1 and 2. In Genesis 1:26, you see where, just give me a moment, please. I'm sorry. And God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion. And in my mind, I was thinking of, there's this pattern or this blueprint, first of all, that is being spoken, and then moving on to verse 27 in Genesis. And again, this is just where I began, because you have to have an understanding of how things began, and and what it originally was set up to be. And then God created man in his own image, and in the image of God created he him, male and female created he them. So that is something that I touched on, or read over. And then moving on to, I'm sorry, let me just look at my notes. Moving on to Genesis 2 and 23 through 25, where it talks about how, I'm sorry, 2:18 first, where the Most High basically, says that Adam has then been created, and he talks about that it's not good for him to be alone, and so he makes all the beasts and all the creatures and things were made, and but still there was no. It says that Adam, but for Adam there was no found a helpmeet, and the Most High wanted him to have a helpmeet, and so what ended up happening, we know the story where the Most High puts Adam to sleep, takes the rib out of the man, and then that's where a woman was made, and then that woman was handed to Adam, and then Adam called Eve. We call her Eve, but in the scripture it says he called her woman. So there you see this the beginning, but also even to define what that helpmeet is, and the helpmeet is someone that come to the aid of or in defense of. So I thought that was really important because again we have this definition of nature, and something happening from birth. And here we see in Genesis where man is created, where woman is created, and then what she was handed to, and we see how she was handed to the man and what for. So that is where I felt was important to begin.
That is important. Thank you for the scriptural references. I think we can also go into Chief's video, "Love to the Bone," and woman is the bone and the rib, which relates to what you just shared, and she protects the vulnerable parts of the children, the lungs, the heart of a man, and she manifests the man's ancestral purpose. So, but we can, if we relate to what Merriam's dictionary, or what the dictionary version of what a woman is, it's an adult female, and then we get into what is a female, and the definition is related to biology. So the biological has the biological sex organs of female biological sex organs, which actually relates to the pole. So I don't know if we want to go into that right now. Did you have anything else you want to? Yeah, okay. So I went around to different women in my life, and some random women. I asked, what is a natural woman? And I know some of the sisters asked as well, and we got about 23 women, a sample size of 23 women who answered, and of various ages. And I'll say that 13% just had no answer. They either were just like, I ain't fighting that fight today with you, or they're just like, everyone can, just no answer. They'd have to think about it. 26% related what is a natural woman to duty and responsibility, and the other 26% said physiology. 17% related it to beauty standards, and the other 17% related it to a disposition or an attitude. So I thought that was really interesting. I thought most people would lean towards a biological answer, but it was kind of split down the middle between duty and biological answer. And I found that actually elder women had more to say about the duty and the responsibilities of being a woman, which was also interesting. And before I started that poll, I had no clue. I must have been living under a rock, Fraggle Rock to be exact, but I had no clue about the What is a Woman documentary by Matt Walsh. Did you two see it? What were your takes on the documentary?
So I think I was really taken aback by the inability, and maybe myself included, of being able to answer the same question of what is a woman, because the question was posed to females, and the reality that no one could really answer. Everybody had like this long, drawn out answer until the end. what a woman was, and I was just like, well, are you making room for something else because are you afraid to say like what a woman is, right? And then I was also taken aback by just the sheer, I don't even know, like it, because it is ignorance, because there's a choice to ignore um, the reality of the consequences, right, of transitioning the gender of a child. And so that there were, the interviews with the doctors who were just willfully ignorant was really interest, not even interest. Well, yeah, interesting, because I had no idea. And I was just like, there was a piece of me that was like, I'm a little offended by some of this, because as someone who has accepted my gender expression, how I naturally came through, it meant that, so now I had to take on a label that I didn't ask for, or a label, I not take it on, but a label is being forced on me that I didn't ask for because someone else wants to change their expression. So that's, kind of a general takeaway. There was more, but that was my general takeaway.
Yes, I felt I had a lot of emotions and feelings about it. I was surprised when he went to the march, those women's marches. I didn't realize at that time that those were feminist marches, but to hear the women say, "Oh, a woman is whatever a woman says that they are," um, a woman is whatever they say a woman is, and didn't want to acknowledge biology, wanted to stick with what it is the individual felt. And then even going on to say, describing what men could be, a woman could be someone that doesn't have this type of genitalia, and a man could be someone who does not have that type of genitalia. And then I when he was talking to the psychologist or psychiatrist, I just thought they were just plumb crazy, especially the woman who's a pediatrician who, affirms young children, their gender assignments or whatever it is they're trying to do to transition. Then I felt a little angry, that they clearly didn't see anything wrong with it. And when I thought it was funny when Mark Walsh did ask this particular physician, well, what is a woman? And she said, well, it's a constellation. And I was like, well, what does that mean? What exactly does that mean? So, but everyone, avoided the question. They couldn't give a definition at all. Yeah, and it was amazing.
Yeah, that part did stand out to me as well. But it was interesting. Like, if womanhood is such a natural thing, would we have to be asking what it is? So I think that's why it stumps people, because they're like, what? Are we at that point that we actually have to ask what a woman is? And then you could see it when he went to that tribe in Africa, and they're like, what
What
kind of
is
question
that?
is this?
Yeah, like they had no clue.
Yeah, and
Chief is
I
saying there's an echo. I'm sorry, or I don't- I see something that says echo. Is there one?
You have to mute.
Okay.
thanks, Chief. Um, yeah, and I think even I got those responses, and a lot of, actually, some of the other sisters got the responses when we were asking other women that question. They're like, they too were stumped because it's never been asked, and there's a lot of debates going on right now online about womanhood and manhood, but I think there's so many debates because it all comes down to culture. And we're going to discuss culture a little bit right now. I just wanted to share something that Master Menelik shared with me before this presentation, and what I understand why a lot of emotions are come from, even analyzing this, but I'll share what's happening in Western culture right now. Okay, no, I can't find it right now. Oh, here it is. Okay. So, can you all see my screen? No?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So an NYC council has cancels mothers in favor of birthing people. And I did bring this up to my own mother, and she got really emotional about it, because motherhood is something, it's like a rites of passage. It is a rites of passage, not like, it's a rites of passage that is deemed so valuable for women who have gone through motherhood and who are still mothers till the day they die. So I just wanted to share that story, and you can look it up yourself. And it kind of speaks to what happens when we don't choose a culture for ourselves. So if you don't choose a culture for yourself, then Western culture seems to be infiltrating blurring the lines to defining what womanhood is. But if there are no steps to becoming a woman, like rites of passages, then sure, anyone can be a woman.
That actually makes me think about, because we don't acknowledge like all these days and the secular holidays, right? Like the ones that we acknowledge are the ones that are important to Hebrew culture. And so we have in the West and in other countries, you have Mother's Day, Father's Day, right? So then does that mean Mother's Day for people who acknowledge that day, does it then become Birthing People's Day? And so then the question is like, how more removed from the characteristics and the aspects and the rites of passage that actually contribute and make you a woman are going to be removed? So there's this idea of like inclusion, yet we're going to remove everything that makes this particular group what they are. I
think it kind of discredits what someone who is transgender or wants to transition into a woman. I think it discredits what they are stating that they say they are, because if transgender women are women, then there would not be a need to remove motherhood. We would need to remove those terms. So yeah, I think it's like a contradiction in what it is that's being stood for.
Yeah, I would agree. And I'm just going to go to the chat for a second. So Ima Yakira Eden. Oh, peace everyone in the chat. Peace. Let's go from the top. Let's do the roll call. Peace. Ima Yakira Eden, Ima Naya, Sovereign Eats, Master Menelik, Aki Isaiah, Alexandria Grice, Chief Yuya, Cruz Alvarez, Safta Arlene, Abba Haru, Aki Lo. Peace. And Ima Akira Eden was saying, I would agree, there is so much ambiguity or lack of truth in the response. And Master Menelik answered, a woman is an adult, human, female. In Anu culture, young girls go through rites of passage in order for them to be acknowledged as adults, which is what exactly we're speaking of right now. And there's other cultures who have rites of passages. I know when we were building, you all brought up, like debutantes. I think Imoku, you brought up something else. I forgot the name of it, but there's Sweet 16.
Yeah, like a quinceañera, or there's always this. Yeah, the point I was making is that across different cultures, there are people that do have cultures that have different rites of passages. I don't know what they are exactly. I believe when mentioning, I was just pointing to when when children, I was aligning with when children, reach a place of puberty, or there's this rite, that they go through, and I just noticed that it aligns. How can I say, like, these biological things are happening with your body. you're coming of age, and then you have this rites of passage that kind of aligns with it, and I think that speaks to, in regards to what is a woman, these things. I think it speaks to all of that. I think it entails, all of those things, and then you have, these social constructs that want, or disruptors, people that want to come and disrupt that. Yeah.
Puberty is a difficult time, for many, and I think that's where this confusion in Western culture is happening, because they're linking that pubescent journey with sexuality, and that's where the confusion is happening. But rites of passages are important, and those rites of passages are, like what you said, biological, and they can never be like duplicated. Like you can't fake that. It's down to their biological cell level. So I think trying to erase all of that is why many women and men are just in uproar about, just erasing what womanhood is. But then that's the culture you chose. So, when we were discussing this, we were talking about if there's going to be a debate or whatever. There's nothing to debate, because we're not practicing. We have chosen a culture. So I would just have to say that I'm not living that culture where you can tell me that I have to be called a birthing person, or,
Right.
So, but I'll just go back to what Safta Hava said. She said, that makes me wonder if there will be a time that artificial intelligence will receive the right to change what they are. That's interesting.
Yeah, that makes me think of, not necessarily like the iRobot, but all of the technology, I guess, that is being created to allow non-women, to allow males to have children or to carry babies. I'm not sure. I think they've made, like, artificial wombs. That's the word I'm looking for. Like, there are artificial wombs and different technology that has allowed transplants and things like that. So, I don't know about iRobot, but hey, iRobot was a thing. That was a concept about wanting to change what you are and, like, be independent and free and be autonomous. And that's almost like a beginning to being changed from servant class to citizen, which is almost the same thing. But, like, changing what you are. So it could be a precursor, maybe.
And there is an iRobot that exists. It does backflips and everything. It's taking out factory workers, So we're on the way. Ima Akira Eden said, the tribe's response speaks to the value of being truly set apart. They had no idea what was being shared, covered in truth, and protected from all else. Yeah, and they even mentioned, having a mental health issue, and actually that has been removed from the World Health Organization to say that gender dysphoria is no longer a mental health issue as of 2019, but rather it's an emotional incongruence, which is the same thing as a mental health issue, because emotional incongruence means you're in disharmony with your emotions. I think they're just, it's semantics. But yeah.
I'm sorry. I was going to say, I think the sad part is that it's acknowledged. Agoraphoria means, they acknowledge that they have an issue with, their body, and they don't want it to be fixed. They don't want to, receive that help. But find someone to affirm that, which leads us in, which takes us back to that place of puberty, because you will find that youth, are uncomfortable with themselves during, those times of puberty. Their body, there's a hormonal change going on, there's emotional things happening, and then there are physical changes happening all simultaneously. And can you imagine what you're going through? And children don't understand that is part of the development that they're going through. And then what happens is, because you're not a part of a culture that could lead and guide and direct you in that. A lot of these days, I think it's obviously the fad are very popular to go to social media, where social media tells you all of these things that you are feeling means that you are not what your biological body is, obviously is. That, if you are uncomfortable in being a little girl, then that means that you are not, instead of being walked through like, no, this is natural. How old are you? You probably started your menses. You don't, you're feeling, you have cramps, you're budding now, and your teeth look funny, you need braces, and you're being told, yeah, this must mean that if you're uncomfortable with this thing, you're obviously, a man. Or some young girls, well, actually, in youth, boys and girls play together, and then as you go into puberty, you start seeing, differences in the young girl. What is her name? Chloe
Cole.
Chloe Cole had a difficult time, transitioning or understanding what was happening to her. And so she was enticed into thinking that, well, actually, you may not be a girl or a woman, and, led her down a destructive course.
I know I looked a hot mess during puberty, so
So did I.
I was not feeling it. So I can just imagine, now with social media, what that does to your mind. And why being covered by both parents, a man and a woman, and a community. And it's important to protect the minds of our children, because they are being attacked right now. And that's really what I got from doing this, is that, they're trying to sterilize these children so early on in life. Like that young lady, she said she can never breastfeed again. And I'm not sure about her reproductive system, but there have been many cases where they've been chemically sterilized. So it's really an attack on the family and on children.
Yeah, and it's irreversible.
I wanted to pull on something that you mentioned, about the natural things that happen, and the menses. That is the first rite of passage. It's biological and it can't be stopped. This is what happens to us, and it's at the onset of puberty, similar to male children. When they have the onset of puberty is when they start to produce semen. Your body will start to, just biologically, what your expression is, it will start to naturally produce and start to kick into gear what your physical expression came through as. And yeah, there may be outliers, but it's we're talking about the majority, and what happens naturally for the majority of people who are the 7 billion people on this planet, right. And that is the experience of puberty, where you do have that confusing time, because duality is real, and we live on a plane of dualism. So there's the male and the female inside of all of us, but we have to honor that physical expression that we came through as. And part of that initiation to it is puberty. It happens in puberty, and you start to, if you're male, you start to produce semen. If you're female, you begin menarche.
Well, in Our New Way, it talks about the rites of passage, and it states that it begins, I'll just say, for a boy or child, it's his first rite of passage will be at the age of 13. And it talks about that by 15, that boy child should be able to emulate, or be able to do the tasks that their father should do. So the fathers are teaching the natural roles of the man. And then the same with the girl child. Theirs begins at Menses, and then what happens with them is I don't know, they're to emulate also what their mother is doing. But there was something, and I couldn't pull on it more because I didn't quite understand it, but the capability for channeling of essence. And I wanted to hone in on that because in my mind, I got a sense that was greater than the biological, being, biologically woman, but there was something else happening as well. Maybe, speaking to the essence of a woman. But you can see the importance. Again, you can see how what's happening with you biologically is lining up with your rites of passage, where you're entering into, womanhood, and you're being taught, these roles. Well, actually, it's supposed to happen from birth, in anyway, and then you enter into your rite of passage, which tells you, this is who you are. This is who you're identifying as. If that makes sense.
Yeah. And, I just wanted to, interject this really quickly. Who are we speaking to? We are speaking to those who share our culture.
Yeah.
As Koti Yamina spoke before, she did make note of this. Like, if you don't choose a culture, one will be chosen for you. And so the one that's chosen for you is the one that is just like the general that everybody's moving in. And the reality is that, we are all here for a purpose. We have a purpose, and there's a journey, because there's a question at the end that we have to follow. So that's what we're supposed to do, and not have anybody knock us off of our square. At the same time, you need to know like which community and which culture you belong to, because you can be on this roadway or this pathway, but be in the fray of all the confusion that's out there, right? Or you can choose what the righteous path is, and like choose that culture that gets you to where you're closer to the Most High. And so I just want to be very clear about like who we're talking to, because the other part of that is, we're not here to judge someone else. Like what you choose to do in your culture is what you choose to do. What we're doing, or what we're talking about, is how we move as Anu, and how we move as Hebrew people and people who follow Hebrew culture.
And I think there's so much emphasis put on the biological. So that's why, these, basically clinical trials on children are being done, because it's not just physical to be a woman, as Kuya was just explaining, but there's so much emphasis on the physical that, even from the poll results, like almost more than like 26% of people said it was about the physical. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's just showing how the general mind, the consensus is that it's always about the physical when you ask what is a woman. I just want to go back to the chat for a minute. Sovereign Eats says, even in my inquiry, some females focused on a natural woman being one who feels and expresses femininity. So a feeling. That's very gray as well. There is an illumination in some females in my inquiry at the thought of being a woman. They were expressive with their smiles, hand gestures, giving their explanations. Cool. Chief gives Bereshit, chapter 2, verse 23, and Adamah said, this time it is the bones from my bones and the flesh from my flesh. This one will be called woman because she was taken from man. Thank you for putting that reference there, Chief.
I don't think it's something that we should quickly skip over. That's what we opened with, is really acknowledging the creator in the order that he set it in. And I believe that those who, that we are speaking to that may be lost, this is something that needs to be emphasized so that they can get back in line, get back in order and say, well, listen, this is how the Most High said it. He said, let us make man in our own image. Then you see references to he, him, then they. Then you begin to see references. Then you begin to see where, then you see where the rib is taken out of Adam. Well, even before that, there was a helpmate, that was the mention of having a helpmate was stated, and then it wasn't found within all the animals that were created. And so the Most High said, let me take the rib, from the man. And then that's when woman was made, and Adam called her, Eve, woman. And I think if we go back to those foundations and really, yes, Ezer Kenegdo, if we go about, we stick in that foundation, that declaration of truth, and then move on, and there won't be this discussion of, then we can have more understanding of what's happening biologically or what have you. But the roles were set, and this is in right here. This is where this is the birth of Adam. This is the birth of Eve, and the roles were set right there. And you can see right then what is a natural woman? The natural woman comes out of the man, right? It comes out of the man, and the natural woman moves as a helpmeet to her headship.
Yeah, but there's seems to be like a consensus in Western culture that the man is like obsolete. Mm-hmm. And even from the responses that I got, only 2 out of the 23 women had anything to say about men. So they mentioned that men being the helpmeet to a man is part of being a woman. So that alone speaks for itself that we've moved away. Well, many of us have moved away from even including man into our definition of what womanhood is, but that's the basis. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if it's okay if I could say more, in the podcast that Chief did on patriarchy, and he talked about it, that it's the disruptors, and that and we know that feminism is been happening for years, but as I would say maybe relating to those who are melanated, he was talking about we didn't just come across moving away from that, but it was disruptors and violent things that took place that moved us away from what we were intended to be. I want to mention Jordan Peterson, and he had spoke on what did he say? He talked about Freud, and this is just relating to women and perhaps the disruptors in the feminine movement about the devouring mother, and I just think that also speaks to moving away from our natural roles as well. And I'll go into it later because it, later on down the line, but I just wanted to, to mention that there are things that were inserted, or things that disrupted our natural order. And then we kind of sort of evolved or became, something else. Yes, Jordan Peterson.
You can go into it now if you want.
Oh, well, just, talking about the devouring mother. And it just speaks to, again, how women are moved away from their natural role, as a woman and being a model for, for the young children. But the devouring mother is someone who has a love-hate relationship with their son because she does not want him to self-actualize himself, and then there's this guilt, that the son may feel for wanting to move independently. And Jordan Peterson just, made mention to just speaking of the issue with women, and again, I'm just saying that speaks to us not moving, in our natural function.
That's them's fighting words for feminists. But even the feminist movement, I know they're trying to move so much away from men, and they attribute men for all of the wrongs in the world. But even the movement is based. It still relates to men. That's what it's so funny to me, because it's like when you say, okay, I'm not gonna be anything like my mother, but you're still using your mother as a base. You're still relating to your mother. Or I'm not gonna be anything like my father, but your father is still the model that you're basing it off of. So I just always find that funny that they're saying we don't want anything to do with men, but we're doing everything that we're doing is based off of a man, because it's inevitable. Men and our natural counterparts. It's biological, it's spiritual, it's everything. So
Right.
there's no escaping it.
No, they feel like they want to be equal, and they don't want these what they call traditional roles, and and the beauty of moving in their own power. And I think we all, we all come from that. I know I have, I can speak to that, as well. And it's something that we constantly have to fight against.
Yeah, they get you at every turn, and we've been indoctrinated whether we want to believe it or not. But it is. I remember saying to someone asking me if I was a feminist, and I was like, no, hell no. But my actions were saying otherwise. Like, if I don't think I need a man, or I'm into INDEP, no, I like, it doesn't work. So my actions were saying otherwise, and it's yeah. I'll just leave that there. But I think it's beautiful to embrace what a lot of these women were saying in the polls, like their responsibilities and duties of being a woman. I found a lot of those responses really beautiful. And there was one woman who actually said, being called to do what what Yah has called us to do. And that was her definition of being a woman. And I appreciated that response so much. But not to say that any response was better than the others, but there's so many beautiful rites of passages that women have, and it's not a given. It is a process. Yeah. Did you all have anything else to add?
I just again wanted to bring light to what is what we're taught, in the Anu way. We were talking about this earlier in the womb call, that relates to the woman's what is a natural woman, and really, what is the nature, what is her nature. In Anu way, under conduct, and it's sexual, it says, a woman's nature is to increase what is given to her. When a woman is in step or submits with her nature, her desire becomes the fulfillment of her natural position, which means that she's living in her purpose and wants to, and that would be towards headship. And it also says a woman's spontaneous inclination, again, which is a natural tendency, is to her headship, which takes you right back to Genesis. Takes you right back to Genesis. I'm sorry, I was just looking at the chat and what Chief said. You mind if I read it? Okay. Needing a man can be tricky. Everyone needs men, but many don't value men as people or their masculinity. They acknowledge they need a man to perform a function they cannot or would rather not. We were talking about that's true, Chief. We were talking about discussion on Shahrazad Ali and how we don't value women don't value men for their ability to be, to guide, to be guidance or nurturing or protectors. But we only see them, qualified if they're, they have, the money. And so, yes, that's true. We don't value men as people or for their masculinity, which is moving in their roles of protectors and providers and giving direction.
Yeah, the objectification of men. It was brought up by Jordan Peterson again, and he was saying, okay, so you guys want equality. Are you guys gonna lay bricks? Like, I think you said over 90% of bricklayers are men. So are you
Yeah.
guys gonna take on those jobs now?
Yes. Or a
And he
lot of
wasn't
the
being,
infrastructure.
yeah,
I'm
he
sorry.
wasn't being facetious. He was just really saying, well, how many
Yeah.
women are going to do that?
Yeah. How many women are going to build houses? How many women are going to build these hospitals or these skyscrapers that you work in? Are you building, are you the builders of cars? Are you, are you doing the heavy lifting, that you say that you want to do, or this, this, if you want this equality, or you feel like patriarchy is such tyranny, then why aren't you going out and doing these? Are you going to go to war? Are you going to do these things that men do? You know, no.
And I think it's important to note what you said. Like, are you gonna go lay bricks? Are you gonna go and have fire coming up in your face as you're welding steel? Balancing hundreds of feet in the air. While they're building these skyscrapers. And are you going to be mixing the sand to make all the concrete? You're going to be go to the rock quarry. To do all of that. Like those things. Like, and it seems even Fred Flintstone-ish when I was like, but there's rock quarries and they're there for a reason. Are you going to be in those spaces? And it's interesting to note that when it comes to the, we should be equal, it's really when it comes to the positions that people see are as positions of power, not necessarily the manual labor, the builders that get things done, right? Not necessarily those, like the things that put you out in the elements. It's the cushy sit in the office places.
But that's not really where our power comes from. And I just want to I don't know if we're wrapping up right now, but that group that we started with, the trans group that was protesting Natural Woman, their mission is to promote cultural changes to ensure the inclusivity of trans individuals. And this is not an attack on trans people, because they are humans as well. And it's if there is a person out there who needs help, I would never want to shun them in any way. But they say it in their mission. They're promoting cultural changes. So it is all about culture. And I just want to highlight that how it started was about culture, and how we're ending is focused on culture.
And it's important, like as we were building before, like your culture and your community actually dictates what, whether you made that rite of passage, like fully into womanhood. And just, I think Imakuya mentioned it earlier when talking about like the different tribes and indigenous peoples. Like there are specific rites of passage that even go beyond the biological, that puts you into that realm of womanhood or manhood that everyone has to go through. Whether it's, we're going to have this ceremony at this age because this is 13 is when you step into manhood, or 13 is when you step into womanhood. And then there's all these things, these levels that you have to meet and make, and that's decided within your community. Like these are the characteristics that describe womanhood, because that's what's in the community. They're not outside of the confines of the community. But when you do step outside of that, you're going to be given all these demands to say that, oh, this is what it is. And if that's not what you want, then you have to make sure that you're in the right space. And I will just remind everybody, the link is at the top of the chat. It has been pinned. So if there is something you want to say, you don't have to regulate yourself to the text chat. You are welcome to come on live, and we'll add you to the screen. And just keep all comments respectful.
Just bringing attention to what Chief said again, but even outside of those roles, a woman can still be a feminist. If I'm reduced as a servant, which is common, even when you speak about value, it's still centered around man doing and not being. And it, it made me think about, I don't know how to put it, about a man being. I think there was an example you used, Chief, about, a man's voice, being, I guess, deep or stern, or, and he is just being who he is. And that made sense to me. Excuse me. I'm sorry. That made sense to me. Like, oh, okay, yes, he's being himself, but there's this discomfort, that women may have or feminists may have, and they feel that they're moving in this authoritative, how can I say, in this manner in which disempowers women. So I think I have a glimpse of what it is that you're saying.
But even respecting that being is part of a woman's role, because we're that's part of the soft underbelly of a man, to see who he be, to see at least, and to experience that, we won't see all of it, but to actually experience it and be in the presence of it is really an honor. And that could, yeah. And I just want to point out that, Safta Hava said we should have the right to say that is what is not part of my culture. And we do have the right. We do. That's the thing. We do have the right. It's are we going to use it? And not just to say, are we going to actually set ourselves apart? Because it does take it, when you're surrounded by it, it does take a level of commitment and like drastic persistence, to set yourself apart. But it can be done.
Well, I would even go further to say something that Yakira Eden mentioned again is why we do set ourselves apart, because we don't want to be amongst that. It's taxing. And I can just speak from my own experience, in an encounter that I had in a class that I was teaching, where I held to my culture. I didn't, speak it out in such a way like this is mine, but there was something that I was holding to, and I was come after, because of that. So, well, then do I even want to? I don't want to have to say, I shouldn't have to. We have the right, but I don't want to have to say that. I think it's better that we can live amongst ourselves, or we don't even have to, encounter anything like that, where you're challenged, where you, like I said, where someone is coming, after you for your livelihood, or, or others' livelihoods. In Canada, isn't there a law in Canada that if you don't refer to individual's pronoun, that it is considered an act of violence? Yeah. You're on mute. I think you're on mute.
Yeah, sorry, it's a bill, and it can be used to it can be used in a court of law for investigation if it's found rooted in if there's evidence that it was rooted in prejudice or hate. Yeah. But even within the workplace, I know my siblings have told me that they have been like, it's been enforced that you have to put your pronouns, or else you get reprimanded. So that's the culture being pushed. And so it's almost like a cognitive dissonance that they're trying to push on, that sounds insulting, but they're trying to push on sane people to, I have to like say I'm she, her, like every day I have to say that out loud. Why does it have to be said? But yeah, that's the culture. That's Western culture right now.
It is, now that I think about it, because there's a new act. So, I've taught implicit bias classes, and they're basing it on, implicit bias in healthcare. And so they are wanting to make healthcare providers and nurses in particular aware of implicit bias and how it affects your treatment and decision making and caring for other patients. And then they use there are specific cases that they use, or studies, if you will, that they use. One about Black maternal morbidity, and then also those who have how can I forgot the wording, but different genders and sexuality. But you see the push for the latter that was aforementioned. Um, and now you do, in more hospitals, as you mentioned, we do, well, I haven't been in a hospital in a while, but what I'm understanding is there's a series of questions that even the nurses are asked as it relates to them going through orientation process of being hired. And then there's a series of questions that need to be asked, when you are approaching your patients as well.
So then how do we practice? Sorry, go ahead, Akotiafe.
I just wanted to pull on a thread that you mentioned about like the pronouns. And I remember like I use it sometimes, we went through an entire like LinkedIn exercise and it's like, make sure you have this, and this. And I was like, all right, I'll do it. Because I can remember thinking like, I'm not acquiescing to that. I'm not putting pronouns. Like, what you see, what do you see? Like what are you calling me? I've given you my name, and what do you see? And I viewed it as like, why should I have to tell you what I am? Like, I'm presenting as this. Like, I haven't, made any indication that I was anything else. And so it dawned on me that it stems from, well, I need to hear that validation that I'm different than what I expressed as.
Mute
What
for a
happens?
second, Nakia.
Yes, to be mute. So what happens is those who are naturally born female and then grow into women are now forced to also reiterate what we are, because there's now confusion in the mix.
Yeah, it's kind of insulting, but I do want to ask, how do we practice compassion in this situation? That's really been on my mind. Not that I have to accept anything. I don't have to accept anything that my culture doesn't outline, but how does one practice compassion?
I mean, I think the compassion is not judging, because if we are not a part of the same community, then I don't have the right to judge. And so understanding that and moving in that way, but also making it very clear where, what my culture is and how I will not be moved off of my square because of something that you need validation for. But there's still a way to show respect or a mutual understanding, I guess, for lack of a better word, in that, but making sure that it is very clear, like, this is the path that I'm on. And I think that is, I think that's being compassionate, because then there's no confusion.
I think the compassion may be to acquiesce what the individual wants to be called, but knowing within ourselves who we are. Because I just, we don't necessarily need to be in the fight. Oh, Chief Yuya is here. Peace, Chief Yuya.
Hey, peace, everyone. Yeah, I'm not gonna stay in too long because I know it's the womb space. But I had a question and I guess a comment, but my question is, what is a natural woman? Did you all specify that clearly as of yet, or was that the punchline at the end?
We kind of did specify it, because we said that each culture defines what a woman is, and it's a process. It's not a given. There's a rites of passage that one female has to go through to reach womanhood.
But do those cultures specify natural woman? Is there a distinction between a natural woman and a woman?
Which culture?
Any of the ones that you're referencing outside of the ones that we live, or the one that we live?
So for Western culture, I would say that they reference a natural woman as being they go towards biological physiology.
If I have a natural inclination towards acknowledging and identifying as a woman, would I not be classified as a natural woman according to Western social ideology?
Oh yes, now, yes.
Okay. So what's a natural woman?
It differs from the definition differs from culture to culture. In Western culture, it aligns with a feeling.
Okay, so feelings don't define anything. In fact, feelings blur definitions. So what would the actual empirical definition be?
Well, then a natural woman would be someone who has a womb, who can reproduce.
So if I was able to undergo a medical procedure where a womb could be placed inside of me and a baby could come from that womb, then I would then in fact be a woman.
Well, no, because you weren't born that way.
Okay, because you didn't specify that.
Okay.
But I
yeah,
mean,
that
are all babies born with the ability and the capacity to give birth to children? Like, can a 1-year-old give birth to another child? Can a 1-year-old be impregnated?
No.
Okay, I'm listening.
So woman is someone who expresses as female, born with a womb, like has the both biological attributes of female, and then goes through the specific rites of passage of her community and deemed so at the end of those rites of passage as a woman. So she's come through naturally and from birth with that biological, and also culturally and socially.
Have any of you women ever seen your wombs?
Outside of a scan, no.
Never.
No. So you don't technically know if you have a womb. You just know someone identified a organ inside of you and said that it's this, and you believe it.
Well, true. True that there's, this is what you have inside of you. And I think that the evidence of that is the menses.
The men sees, you say?
Yeah, the menses.
The men.
the men that see.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
And
The
it
menses.
comes from it comes from the Latin word month, for month, monthly.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I mean, I ask these questions, so that way there's something to stand on as I'm listening. Not saying that you're not presenting and providing something to stand on, but just getting some concreteness. I know when I had put Genesis 2:23 in the chat, and part of the significance when I had placed that in there earlier was not just the fact that, well, it's already kind of been defined for us by word. When you look at the term ish and isha, so this one. Now, I think it's also significant when it says Adoma said, "This time it is the bones for my bones and the flesh for my flesh." Now when you read your regular English King James translation, it says, "Now it is the bones for my bones." But the actual original Aramaic said, "This time." So meaning that this was not the first. But this one is very particular. This one is different, right? But what was also significant there, and that's why it's always so good to know the language. Like when you read in earlier verses, when you hear about or not hear about, excuse me, but when you read about the, I guess kind of like the leading up to that creation, I think that's the second chapter, the 18th verse, where it says, it's not good for that man should be alone. let's make a helper for him. You know, up until Genesis 2 and 23, we don't get the word ish or isha. Every word for man that's used up until that point is adoma. You know, so that alone lets us know that when there is a transgression against your femininity, you know, when you have people who are playing, you know, back in the days we had what we call minstrel shows, and you had people who were of other races or ethnicities outside of those who were considered to be Africoid, where they would put shoe polish on their faces and they would pretend to be them, you know, and these were different shows that they would put on, and they would get paid for it to do that. Well, now you have that, but you have gender minstrel shows, you know, where you have people who are putting on makeup and face paint, and they're pretending to be you, and they're really making fun of you. At the end of the day, that's what they're doing, you know. But we see that when that happens, yes, we do see it as an attack on femininity. But if we don't know how to really define what our spirituality tells us about this, we don't see that it's also an attack on masculinity. Not to take anything away from the femininity, but I'm just speaking to the balance of it, right? Because if I was not called Ish before you were called Isha, then it shows that from a cosmic divine perspective, my masculinity is dependent on your femininity. Because prior to that, I was called Adoma. And Adoma, you could translate really as mankind. So I didn't even have individualization until you were individualized as woman. Right at that moment, now my journey as a man began. Because prior to that, but I think what's also significant, because if we were combined into one before, why was it said that it wasn't good for me to be alone? You know, so this idea of us not connecting with our contrast is the idea of us being placed alone, placed into isolation. So even if I'm around 15 other men, I'm alone. If you women are around 15 other women, by spiritual decree and definition coming straight from your Elohim, you are actually still alone. So it's not until there is Ish and Isha, or there's not until there is the male and female, that now we're not alone. So I just asked that because I just thought it was significant that you know, and again, I'm not speaking about like, well, what about the men, you know, or anything like that. It's not so much that, you know, it's just the larger picture of what this conspiracy is, you know. And I know that Sister Yamina asked about that, the compassion. I think compassion becomes difficult until we can actually see what we should be compassionate about. You know, my compassion extends to those who have a mental illness. I feel sorry for them that they have a mental illness and that they have a spiritual insanity that they're living in. And just because I recognize someone as being spiritually insane, it doesn't mean that I'm afraid of them. Or because they have a mental illness, or they have something that they say that I disagree with. I'm not afraid of people with mental illnesses. And I'm not afraid of people with spiritual and cultural insanity and cultural crazy. That doesn't make me afraid. You know, so I think first we have to look at, well, what is the actual thing to feel bad about or to feel sorry about? And I would say it's the you're alone. One of the very first gifts that were given to you, you are not capitalizing on, you know, and you are mentally sick. You're mentally ill. You know, and we're not addressing that part as much. There's a mental illness. Now, as far as you being a human, well, yeah, well, you know, you might be, you know, but whether you are or you aren't, I think that the thing that we need to, because compassion is to share in someone's misery, or to provide pity because you're sharing in someone's suffering. You know, and I think at all times, all of us at some time have felt the pain of our own crazy. We've all walked through the halls of crazy. That's the compassion. So now when we move beyond compassion, we say, well, how did I get out? And that's it. It ends right there. This is how we get out. That's it. Now, you can do that or not, that's on you. So that's what I was just curious about from you all. If there are some solid definitions so that we can draw that contrasting line to know exactly what we should be targeting. We say, man, I feel for you. What am I exactly feeling for? I'm not feeling because for someone who's a dude who says, man, I wish I could have a baby. I wish I could bleed every month. That's my compassion does not extend towards that. Because again, that's the minstrel show. I have seen with my own eyes men who have grabbed hold of feminine hygiene products and made fun of them. But these are men who identify as women. And they have grabbed them with their own hands and joked and laughed about where they would put them. But they consider themselves, they identify as women. So that would be like someone of another ethnic group putting on blackface and then laughing about me being brutalized by law enforcement and making a whole skit about it. Yeah, I would probably, see that as an insult. So
Give thanks. It's like the compliment is what makes the masculinity and the femininity, because it what is it without the other one? You need the compliment.
Yeah, thank you for probing and clarifying that, Chief, because the initial reaction is a feeling of being insulted, because even in the act of it, it's like it looks crazy. So yeah, I just wanted to that was a genuine question I wanted to ask about compassion. So thank you for clarifying.
Yes, I give thanks as well. When you mentioned about connecting with your contrasts, and then, we're not alone. You're pointing out individuation. That was
I think
good.
that also is in complementarity.
It is.
I think it was said.
It is. So, like,
It's
that's
only in the
exactly
perverted. Yeah, it's only in the perverted and extremely individualistic Western mind is the argument made that males can be dominated by female energy and vice versa, or that they may have equal amounts of male and female energy. Not, so it's always going to be complementarity over everything else.
Yeah.
Yes, I don't know if there's anything else
Yeah,
you guys want. Okay, we're gonna keep going. Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot more, because I think based on what Chief also said, it's like, what is a natural woman? And then it kind of begs us to go further to say, like, because there's like not necessarily a standing on a solid ground of what a natural woman is, the line is blurred. And so it actually leaves us open for attack, right? And then also, and I'm gonna connect it to a comment in the chat, because we talked about this before. All the things that we do, and the prosthetics and the things that we put on, where both men and women are using the same things. How makeup is applied, we put in all these things to augment ourselves, and we say, oh, this makes us better women, or some people say that it makes us better, or makes us more attractive. And so even in that's not natural, that's unnatural. And like, so even what Alexandria Grice is saying, like, like how we put on these applications, right? And that's everything about that is unnatural. So has there ever really even been in Western, culture, a solid foundation on what a natural woman is? Even us sitting here, like, have we ever had that solid foundation? we're doing it now. We're trying to define it now.
Yeah, not really, because even when Chief was asking that question about if there's a solid definition in Western culture, I found like even they were saying the trans men, or sorry, see, they got me confused. The women who were expressing as men were saying that men could be mothers because they are now men and they went on to have babies. So that it's blurring. The lines are so blurred that nobody know it. When the lines are so blurred, that's when I'm just repeating what you said, Kotiafe. But that was just an example that came to mind when you were speaking. So yeah, I think definitely going in with definitions on and defining which culture is defining what is important.
I just wanted to jump in on something real quick. I wasn't asking so much for the Western definition of what a woman is. That has already, that's clear. That's already been put forth. I don't think I was saying what is ours as you being Anu women. How is that being defined? The mother culture of Western culture is your Grecian culture. And if you look at how a woman was depicted in ancient Greece, aside from being, sculpted with no arms, a woman had no political power in ancient Greece, and pretty much at every stage of her existence, you know, um, she was kind of diminished and she was controlled because the greatest value in ancient Grecian culture were men and boys, and the highest forms of love were defined between as the love between men and boys. So the woman was only there to assist in the continuing of that man's legacy and nothing more. So when you fast forward, of course, to today, it would be no different. So many of the activities that you even see at certain parades and things like that, where people show their pride, those are old celebrations. Like you look at the celebration of Saturnalia, where men would dress up as women and they would lay with each other and they would go home and they would beat their wives. You look at the celebrations of Astarte, where the men would dress up as women and they would go hide. And then the men who would find them would then lay with them. This is where you get the beginning basis of your Easter egg hunt. That's where that came from. The men would hide in bushes, and it was like hide and go freak, if anyone has ever played that game. But that actually is from ancient Greece. You'd hide, and then the man would find you, and he'd, bust you open. So some of the things that are happening today are just a revival of those ancestors, their ancestors, saying, okay, well, we're reestablishing our culture and what we have done. So within our walls, because when I trace myself back, whether I'm tracing myself through Hamitic lines or if I'm tracing myself through Shemitic lines, we don't have that. Those were not the kind of celebrations that I have ever found any documentation or any artwork that's depicted anything like that in my travels all around the place that I believe that I am from. So that's not me. But theirs have been, they're clear. They're very clear, because you can look at their mythology and also understand how they depicted the female. You look at the planets that were attributed to the female gods versus the ones that were attributed to the male gods, and to the lovers of the male gods, like Ganymede, who was Zeus's boy lover, or Narcissus, where you get the Narcissus. Narcissus was also someone that another god was in love with. He was a young boy, right? So we have a lot of these stories about, that sort of affair. So I just wanted to kind of point that out. I'm really zeroing in on what the Anu women say. And there's one other thing I want to say before I jet it. I know there's a lot of talk around finally coming to an admission on how much women, and I put this in the chat, how much women need men, like you were saying, who's going to lay the bricks and who's going to do that. This is one of the reasons that many men are resigning from marriage at this point. Because whereas you or some women may finally just be waking up to our abilities and our skills, that certainly is not our value. Our value is not rooted in our ability to protect you. Our value is not rooted in our ability to guide you or to give you financial advice or to build civilizations for you. That is not where our value is rooted. Our value is rooted in the fact that we're men. Because if it was to turn on you and we said you're only good if you are in the kitchen cooking with a baby on your hip, you'd probably look at that a little differently, especially if you can't have children or haven't had children or you can't cook to save your life, right? So you've gone through a lot of experiences, especially in a cultural community, where you claim a certain level of value just because of your womb, punani power, and all those sort of things like that, even as silly as they may be. But you're acknowledging that just the beingness and owning your identity as a woman is where your value is. Well, we know that too about ourselves. So when you say that you need us because we can do something for you, it makes us not want you. Because we know that your need and your love only comes with the obligation of more labor. You don't say you need a man because you need a man, and without a man, you're incomplete. And you need a man. You don't say you need a man because you need someone to serve. And if you're not serving and being a helpmeet, you're not much of a woman. You're saying you need a man because you need somebody to come fix your air conditioner. You need someone to move your furniture around. You need someone to go downstairs because you heard a noise at the door. You need a man for that. Well, we'd rather just not do any of that, because ultimately it still means that you don't value us and you don't appreciate us. And most importantly, you don't even love us. A robot can do those things, so just wanted to throw that out there.
iRobot, to be exact.
But, thanks for that correction.
Yeah, I wasn't, I was bringing that up from what Jordan Peterson said. And I think that he brought up the bricklaying because of how much objectification women were, or females were, expressing towards men. So he started as that. He stated, well, you're not even going to do that. So, but I understand what you're saying, Chief, as well, that that's not even, that's like a blip of what a man is.
Well, I also, I know the clip you're talking about. I saw it. I'm a listener of Jordan Peterson, but Jordan Peterson is from Canada, and he is not Anu, and he is not even of my ethnic group. So his viewpoints on manhood, I don't share. Right? I only share what comes from my L, not his L. But I understand, you're using him as an example. But what I'm saying is that even in using that example, even females of my own group use that same kind of ideology when they finally wake up. And the secret in that is that most females in their mid to late 30s and up start using that kind of language. I realize I need a man, because you've lost the majority of your sexual market value, and men are no longer doing things for you for free anymore. That's why you realized it. When you were 19 and 20 years old and you were at your cutest and men were falling over themselves to do things for you, you didn't think that you needed them or that you needed to respect them or anything like that. So those statements are often said out of survival. They're not actually said out of love, you see. So I think that's something very important to pay attention to, because sometimes you don't realize, just because you've woken up to something recently, it doesn't mean that we didn't wake up to it a long time ago. And it will start to give you reason as to why some of the things happen that happened. He just had sex with me and never called me again. because he knew you just wanted to use him. So he used you and then got out of there as soon as he could because he knew you weren't good for anything else. Because you came in the door wanting something. He probably, when you met him, you said, "Oh, you can come by and do this for me. You could fix this for me. You could fix, okay, yeah, I'll do that for you. Then I'm going to take you to the bedroom because I see you don't respect me, and then I'm going to never see you again." So that's a part of some of the ideology that I would say it's powerful in this stage to take another look at. Because remember, like I said, when you wake up, there's already a path in front of you that somebody put. So you think you're waking up when you're not really waking up. When you decide to eat healthy, there's already a health aisle with garbage in it. And you're thinking it's good, but it's garbage. When you decide that you finally want to respect men, there's already something put in front of you telling you how to respect men, and it's garbage. Oh, because now at this age, I realize I got the career and everything and this and that, but I need a man now. No, but we don't need you. In truth, we don't even want you, especially with that ideology. You're still missing the mark. When do you love us? And why, when you read scripture, there's no, all of the instructions on love are directed towards the woman, telling you how to love us. Because that's a part of your sickness. You don't love us. We have an innate desire to take care of you and to look out for you, and that's been weaponized against us. But you don't love us. So even when you wake up to some level of awareness, it's still not a love statement. It's a survival statement. I need a man to come do this for me. You see? So you'll pretend to be down with the program. You'll pretend to be soft. You'll pretend to be feminine. So you can get him into the house and you can get him working for you. And then you can only pretend for so long. And then once you drop your composure, he's out of there. That's the story. So I'm just saying, is that indicative of a natural woman? Our new woman, that way of thinking? Because, I mean, when you read again further in that story, Eve from the beginning was like, I ain't listening to him. And she had to be commanded that your desire will be for him because your desire ain't for him. I already know that about you. Your desire is not for him. But it's got to be, he's going to have to rule over you. Because that's the only way to make this thing functional. Because have it your way, well, we'd have America.
Give thanks for that. That's not how our new woman should be. And I think even like the conversation that we're having here and saying some of those things means that some of that ideology is still present, right? And so only by doing and being anu, like doing things and modeling, is it going to like continuously be put out and put away. That loving is understanding like the compliment that our complement is there, that contrast is there, not based on what a man he can do for us. The natural woman in Anu, the natural woman exhibits the required qualities. The natural woman is a mother. The natural woman is the economy of a household, doing and being all of those things and more.
I would say the natural woman is her desire and love is towards her headship. And in that we are mothers, in that, we're the economy because all of it is for our desire, and what we want to do is for him, which I would take as that love.
And I think acknowledging that it's needed, because that, as you just pointed out, it says it in scripture, like that's our limitation, that's our sickness. So even acknowledging that's what the sickness is and coming under the headship and the covering, knowing that that's what needs to be squashed, well, I don't know the word, put away. How about that? Put away, burned away, scrubbed off.
Yeah. Well, I think that even Chief's addition to the womb space is example enough of what a natural woman is.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm gonna leave it at that.
I mean,
really more.
But like even his presence, it shows the complementarity. You need it. It means nothing. Like, because what is the use of the womb without the male, without the man?
Mm-hmm.
What's the use of it? It doesn't produce anything. It's just there.
Yes, but thank you everyone for joining. I know no one came through other than Chief. If you do have anything that you'd like to add, always comment below. Always leave a comment underneath the video when it's posted. And we do have another episode next strong, which will be focusing on. Are we going to announce the topic already?
I don't know that it's probably going to be beauty, but our womb room episodes will be every Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So that's 7 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Mountain, and 5 p.m. Pacific.
Cool. Thanks for joining, everyone.
Yeah, give thanks. It was good. Peace.
It was good. Thank you for your answers in the poll.
All right.
Peace, everyone.
Peace.
Praise of all his saints, even unto the children of Yeshua, a people near unto him. Praise ye Yahuwah. Monument, 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 monument. Just give us freedom. That's all we need. Congratulations, you have graduated. This level of matrix, your acculturation. No, you couldn't wait.